Story 1. This was a user named Fuckswithducks who had an extensive rubber ducky fetish. Anytime a post contained a rubber ducky, he would be in the comments identifying when and where that ducky was produced. He also had a large collection of rubber ducky pornography. He was never creepy and came across as a chill guy who took every opportunity to talk about rubber duckies and had a great sense of humor. Eventually, he stopped appearing in the comments where I would normally expect him. A couple of years later, I learned he had died of cancer. I never knew him beyond occasionally being entertained by his very public enthusiasm for his bizarre fetish, but I was deeply saddened when I found out. I still think of him when I stumble across a rubber ducky in the wild. Rest in peace, King. Story 2. An explanation of grief as a shipwreck. Story 3. The Man Who Thought Kbat by Hudson Mohawk was a good song to make love to did not understand why his girlfriend hated it. Story 4. Window steak is my personal favorite. My wife posting her perspective makes it perfect. Story 5. The intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Electronic Arts is behaving badly. Story 6. The man who ate about 3 feet of a party sub wrote long paragraphs about everyone's actions and timing to justify why he thought it was acceptable to eat so much. He was at a fun gathering with friends, and the only thing on his mind the entire time was food. Story 7. The story of 2 brothers camping. One brother was in the military. Some men visited their campsite and were acting strangely. In the middle of the night, the older brother quietly woke his sibling because he had a bad feeling, so they headed up into the hills. Sure enough, not long after, the men came looking for them. It freaks me out because I go camping with my sons. It happened in the southern United States in Alabama, so I will avoid that area. Story 8. A man describing trying heroin and becoming addicted. Story 9. Today you, tomorrow me. Story 10. I don't know if it started on Reddit, but the person who wrote, "Wow, this was a great movie. I just wish there were more aliens in it." About to start the second one, later added, "Holy shit," when talking about the alien movies. Story 11. Am I the asshole for perpetuating ethnic stereotypes about jorts? To this day, he is still one of my very favorite internet personalities. If you search for that, you can read the story. Story 12. The man was so into the idea of scat until he actually tried it. Story 13. The man who ordered an entire battleship to change course to get the sun out of his eyes. Story 14. Kevin. Swamps of Dagoba. Story 15. The guy who gets caught in a lie about not knowing what a potato is the first time he meets his girlfriend's parents. Story 16. The man posting in a legal subreddit asked if there was any way he could force the mother of his child to have custody of their son. He was a single father who got a woman pregnant and would not allow her to terminate the pregnancy. He insisted she have the child, convinced she would feel differently once the baby was born. She did not. She gave birth, refused to hold the child, and signed away her parental rights to him. She had a tummy tuck and pretended she never gave birth. She pays 150% of the required child support but refuses to see the child at all. The original poster wanted to know if he could take her to court to force her to spend time with the child and called her a deadbeat. The subreddit responded harshly, with many replies calling him delusional and entitled. The other case that stands out involves a woman whose boyfriend was feeding her slugs. He blended them and put them in her food for months, which made her sick. He was also replacing her heart medication with sugar tablets. Story 17. When the legend user The Malleable Duck rickrolled Rick Astley. Story 18. There is a post on the subreddit Confessions about a drug dealer who had just started. He mixed up the drugs and gave a man fentanyl instead of the drug he had ordered. The man shared it with his friend, and they both overdosed. Story 19. It is for a church, sweetie. Next. A $700 charcuterie ramp. Story 20. A man posted an Ask Me Anything about his great-uncle who had been in 3 concentration camps. Someone asked which one was his favorite. The comment was downvoted to oblivion. Story 21. A man once told the haunting story of how he lived an entire lifetime while in a coma, and I was his dream. The lamp changed little by little every day until he woke up, and the dream of living a life with a loving family ended. This should be a movie. Story 22, 1. Comebox, and more importantly, how casually the original poster mentioned it. 2. The comment about how rabies kills you violently terrified me. Story 23. The man who stood by and let his wife almost kill their son. Story 24. The man with the cylinder. Search Reddit for AskReddit cylinder. I do not think it is just a cylinder. Story 25. The man who was building an art studio in his house for his friend and his wife was pissed. Story 26. The man on the Gran Turismo subreddit who took magic mushrooms before playing in virtual reality and uploaded footage of himself tripping, expecting others to see his hallucinations. Story 27. Do you like that, you fucking derogatory slur? Story about the guy trying to talk dirty to his girlfriend still cracks me up. Story 28. A man invested his $100,000 inheritance in silver, while his brother invested his in Bitcoin. That is absolutely brutal. Story 29. When the Undertaker threw mankind off hell in a cell, he plummeted 16 feet through an announcer's table. Story 30. The post on the subreddit koalas that explains why they suck so much. I am also partial to the James Corden Ask Me Anything because fuck that guy. Story 31. I can't remember the name, but a man said his wife was obsessed with the attention she got posting fake stories online. She would constantly reply to messages and create new profiles to post more stories, and the stories became increasingly insane. He wrote her name, and for a few weeks afterward, whenever there was a crazy post, people would mention him and ask if it was his wife or say things like, "Name, is this you?" Or, "Name, stop making things up." I really enjoyed this part. Story 32. It does not seem like anyone mentioned the man who farted on the child in the store. I have never laughed so hard in my life. I always go back and find it every once in a while. Story 33. You died in Clearwater on a sunny day in only 4 minutes. Story 34. Poop knife, Jolly Rancher, coconut. A story about a man and his wife whose first child seemed demonic, and the wife almost beat the child to death when he was older. Story 35. It was the lazy military officer who turned the ship so he could eat a bagel without the sun in his eyes. Definitely that one. Story 36. The what to do if you win the lottery post is an all-time classic. Story 37. The lady whose husband and father-in-law were obsessed and sure that she would die in childbirth is someone I think about sometimes. I hope she is okay. Story 38. A person posted a story about how an employee threw a cabbage at a customer, and somebody asked if they deserved the cabbage. I'll never forget the reply. As a grocery store employee, they all deserve the cabbage. Story 39. The man whose wife, Jenny, was cheating on him claims she and the other man only met up for kisses. Story 40. Whenever I read a long, rambling post about a childhood anecdote that ends with the narrator being beaten by his father with jumper cables, I never noticed the username, and the twist always surprises me until the end. Story 41. This subreddit will help you find some of these entries in the Museum of Reddit Lore Wiki. Story 42. The man who always began a serious story in the comments, only for it to end with his father beating him with extension cords. Hilarious. Story 43. Aktha, my sensual roach queen. Edit. Just the other day, I found out about a guy who somehow referenced being beaten with jumper cables in every comment he made, no matter the topic. It makes me laugh so hard. Story 44. This is the one where a woman took a crap so big she had to bury it in her then recent boyfriend's litter box. A day later, he asks her, "Did you take a shit in the litter box?" Embarrassed, she replies, "Ew, gross. Why would I ever do something like that?" He answers, "Well, my cat died last week and I found a huge turd in the litter box." Story 45. Tony Pizza. The semen box. I also choose that guy's wife. Story 46. The lawyer describes in detail what to do if you win the lottery. This includes, as much as possible, keep it to yourself, especially family and friends. If you must accept a check with a photo, wear something that disguises your appearance, such as a fake mustache or a wig, and ask for your name to be presented in a form most people do not recognize. For example, imagine most people know J.R.R. Tolkien as John Tolkien. which professionals to hire to help organize trusts. Only after those steps should you discuss money with friends, family, charities, or others. Funds are distributed only under the terms of a specific trust and only in specified circumstances. Story 47. Semen Box. The guy who had two dicks and his Ask Me Anything. The safe. Poem for your sprog. Poop knife. This guy's wife. Those are all certified Reddit legends. Mine is from a thread in a cannabis subreddit where people were talking about driving while high on marijuana and how they thought it made them drive better because they were focusing harder on the road. Bad logic. Do not drive while high on anything. Anyway, one comment said, I am a cop and I always know when someone is high because they drive too perfect. It was in the context of people saying that when they drive high they drive too perfectly, and that would be suspicious because everyone speeds a little and does things you are not supposed to. For years I have been trying to figure out whether that was actually a cop who knows when people are high because they drive too perfectly or someone just making a smart-ass joke on the internet. I have been thinking about that comment for about 10 years now. That is how you know I have been on Reddit for too long. Story 48. Jenny asked whether she slept with him. The other person said they only kissed and briefly touched his penis. Story 49. Dude who fucked the coconut. Side note. I'm proud to say that my iPhone knows I mean fucked. Story 50. How to get yourself out of a funk and be a better human. No 0 days. The most disgusting, gut-wrenching medical story I have ever heard. Swamp of Dagoba. Story 51. The most downvoted comment in Reddit history. I guess it is 668,000 downvotes and counting. Story 52. There was a post on AskDocs. A young teenager posted about mysterious symptoms. It turned out the stepmother was poisoning her stepdaughter by putting Visine into the water flavoring drops. The teenager said she planned to delete her post, so I don't think many people saw it. Story 53. The one in which a troubled child is beaten into a pulp by the mother. Story 54. Sorry, I can't access or reproduce the content from that link. I can either summarize the post for you or edit and clean up the text for Azure text-to-speech if you paste it here, correct spelling, expand acronyms, remove repetition, fix punctuation, and strip links/special characters. Which would you like? Story 55. A post about the immortal snail and trapping it so the poster could live forever. Story 56. The man with the mysterious sticky notes appearing all over his apartment had carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty boiler. He was writing notes to himself and did not remember it. Someone in the comments saved that man's life. Story 57. The swamps of Dagoba. Do not go there if you have a weak stomach. Story 58. Several comments quoted the monster math lines. It was a graveyard graph, and it was a classroom smash. Story 59. The man who went to dinner at his wife's boss's house and tried to throw the steak out the window. Story 60. Poem for your sprog was a Reddit user, not a post. This person wrote poems as comments on many Reddit posts. I chose them for a high school project about 6 years ago. We had to select a poet and analyze some of their poetry, and I received an A grade for the project. Their poems were often incredibly humorous responses to whatever they were replying to, but some were more contemplative. I haven't seen them around in years. Story 61. Coconut Grandma. All she had to do was listen to her daughter, and her grandchildren would still be alive. Story 62. There was once a post about a man who pressured his girlfriend to open up their relationship. He later regretted it when she had sexual encounters with other men, while the women who had flirted with him were not interested in sleeping with him. He was roasted in the comments. I can't find the post anymore. Story 63. Novelty accounts assemble will always be the pinnacle of Reddit to me. Story 64. Poop knife. Something about the way it was written makes it a favorite Reddit story of mine. I think everyone has something unique to their family, yet they still think other families do it too. Story 65. There are 5 cats in the basement and I can only count to 4. Story 66. I fall for almost any post by user Shittymorph. Even after years, I still fall for it because I never look at the username. Story 67. Getting Randy and his wet floor sign fetish. And that one guy's wife. Story 68. Not quite legendary, but it started with a spatula. Story 69. Someone did a deep dive into exactly how mass crowd trampling and crushing occur. It was incredibly morbid, of course, but fascinating. He made a post that was essentially a crash course on the whole phenomenon. I never forgot it, but I am too lazy to try to find it. Story 70. Okay, no one else will remember this one, but it has stuck with me from 8 years ago, posted by user Bitterstan. Thank you. It was a comment on an AskReddit thread asking what the strangest date you've ever been on was, which are always a favorite of mine because the stories are so loopy. Here it is. This is 2001, so video home system and chill at this girl's dorm room. My first time over there, and there is this giant bear on the bed, the kind you win by getting the softball into the milk jug on your first try at a carnival. It occupies half the surface area. I say, "Whoa, how did you score that bear?" She says she does not know. A few minutes go by. I say, "You don't know?" She says, "Yeah." I say, "Okay, look, it's okay if it's from an ex. I do not care if you stole it. I will believe almost anything you tell me at this point. But there is no way in hell you are going to tell me you do not know where that giant bear is from. I had a stuffed dinosaur 1/4 that size that I got when I was 6, and I could tell you every detail about how I got it." She says, "Well, good for you. But I do not know how I got it. Are you going to be able to let this go?" I look at the bear. The bear seems to stare back, eyes full of secrets. "I do not think I can," I say, and I walk out. Story 71. The "Are you fucking sorry" girl accidentally kicked a soccer goalie in the face, and in the heat of the moment meant to say, "Are you okay?" and "I am fucking sorry," but it came out as "Are you fucking sorry," which has a different connotation than intended. Story 72. Novelty accounts of Reddit assemble. Story 73. Foot taco guy. Someone had their foot amputated and then made tacos with it, which they shared with friends who knew they were foot tacos. I am pretty sure it was an Ask Me Anything and the moderators verified it. There were also pictures. Story 74. Recently, a man pretended to be inheriting a large amount of land and money from his uncle. He posted daily, then weekly about his first weeks figuring things out. Then, poof, he vanished and never posted again on the In the Valley subreddit. Story 75. Garage raccoons. Story 76. I can't open external links. Please paste the text you want edited. I will correct spelling, expand acronyms, replace each acronym with its full form, remove meaningless repetition and special characters, fix punctuation, and strip links to make it suitable for Azure text-to-speech. If you prefer acronyms kept in parentheses after the full form, say so. Story 77. The guy who called Dan Radcliffe a fucking casual in an Ask Me Anything. Story 78. I do not have the post saved, but I remember a post in the Best of Reddit Upvotes subreddit where a woman was toxic to her boyfriend. A commenter advised her to send the Reddit post to her boyfriend to show how toxic the situation was. That comment was clever because it exposed the girlfriend, and the boyfriend ended the relationship. If anyone has the thread saved, please post it. The commenter made a very clever move. Story 79. The man who doubled down by pretending not to know what a potato was in front of his girlfriend's family. Story 80. This is the story of an ignored child who grew up, graduated college on his parents' dime, and then wanted nothing to do with them. They went on vacation every other month and never took him. When he was 3 and had nightmares, he would go to their bedroom door and cry, and they would not let him in. They all looked surprised when he did not invite them to his wedding. He felt nothing for them. It's like the song Cats in the Cradle. Note: the post was written by the father after not being invited to the wedding. Story 81. Lots of good ones here. The one I always think of in these threads is the tale of the guy who thought he could do heroin just once. That one was tragic. Story 82. The Electronic Arts comment on the Battlefront subreddit is, I believe, still the most downvoted comment on Reddit. They tried to explain that locking 90% of heroes behind a paywall at the launch of Battlefront 2, released in 2017, allowed players to earn them. Story 83. The person was vegan and claimed that their mother was force-feeding them cow feces and urine. The first comment told the original poster to eat their mother. Story 84. A discussion about how creepy warts are led to someone mentioning that a katydid had chomped off a wart on their foot. It became a silly ditty parodying the sound of silence. A minstrel quartet tune about how the katydid really ate the wart to the sound of crying. I forgot the lyrics, which were golden. It is on a screenshot somewhere. Story 85. I have a link for you. Have you seen the Blues Brothers? If you have, you will enjoy this. If you have not, this explains why you should watch it now. Story 86. On a post that asked if people could sleep with anyone, dead or alive, who would they choose? A widower answered that he would choose his wife over everyone else. I also choose this man's wife. Story 87, verified son, of course, and the post about the man who was being poisoned by carbon monoxide and leaving himself notes. Story 88. When Rick Astley got rickrolled, I was following the thread in real time and watched it happen. I felt like the universe folded in on itself. Story 89. It is probably not legendary, but it will never leave my head. It came from a comment in one of those AskReddit threads titled, "People who work in porn. What is the wildest thing you saw on set?" A commenter said he was working on a porn set as crew, not as an actor. He wrote that during an anal scene the woman had diarrhea while the man was thrusting. The man started screaming and ran to a bucket. He described it as the man peeing out a poop noodle. I keep having that image pop into my thoughts. Story 90. On an online discussion board, a man asked every day for a while what underwear people were wearing. It was annoying, but the place felt empty once he stopped. Story 91. Rome Sweet Rome began as a Reddit post in 2013 by a Reddit user. It was picked up for adaptation into a film but later entered development hell and is unlikely to be produced. A Wikipedia article and a subreddit now exist for the story. Story 92. Wheelchair domination. Story 93. I miss the grilled cheese posts. A man made grilled cheese sandwiches every day for 365 days and rated them all. That was one of the coolest things on Reddit. I love my tiny pants keychain. Story 94. A man worked for a small business whose owners held their annual company retreat at a former plantation in the Deep South, staging a big, formal gala in the style of Gone with the Wind. One problem: they forgot about him, their only black employee. He dressed as a field slave for the retreat and took many photos of himself on the plantation, including the moment his managers first saw him, dressed in formal attire while he stood barefoot with a straw hat. It was truly epic. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.